At 83, Al Pacino still carried the magnetic aura that had defined his career. His silver-gray hair was swept back, his dark eyes sharp and inquisitive, though the wrinkles around them softened their intensity. He had come to the Grand Meridian for a quiet weekend, hoping to escape the relentless bustle of New York. Al Pacino wasn't planning on making a scene. He rarely did these days. All he wanted was a cup of tea while waiting to check in. But in a divided America, even such a simple act could ignite a storm. Pacino settled into a plush armchair in the hotel lounge, a cozy nook near the lobby with leather-bound menus and a view of the bustling street outside. The faint clink of porcelain cups and the murmur of quiet conversations created a soothing backdrop. He pulled out his phone, dialed his longtime friend and manager, Charlie, and leaned back, speaking softly, but with a passion that always colored his words. "Charlie, I'm telling you, this guy's a clown," Al Pacino said, his thick New York accent as sharp as ever. "Trump's acting like he's still in charge, stirring up nonsense." "What a jackass." He chuckled, shaking his head, unaware that his voice had carried farther than intended. At a nearby table, a man in his 60s, gray suit, American flag pin on his lapel, face flushed either from the sun or indignation, jerked his head up. His name was Ronald Hargrove, a retired insurance manager from Bucks County and a fervent supporter of the former president. Ronald narrowed his eyes and leaned toward his wife, Evelyn, hissing, "Did you hear that? That's Al Pacino bad-mouthing Trump." Evelyn, her silver hair neatly pinned, shot him a wary look. "Ronald, keep your voice down. It's none of our business." But Ronald was already on his feet, his polished shoes clicking against the marble as he marched toward the host stand. The host, a young man named Tyler with a nervous smile and an assistant manager badge, looked up from his tablet. "Excuse me," Ronald said, loud enough to draw attention. "I just heard that man over there," he pointed at Pacino, still oblivious on his phone, "insult President Trump. This is a respectable hotel, isn't it? You can't let people spout that kind of garbage." Tyler's smile faltered. "Sir, I'm not sure I follow. Could you clarify?" "He called Trump a jackass," Ronald spat, as if the word itself were an outrage. "I'm a regular guest, and I won't sit in a place that tolerates that kind of talk." Pacino, sensing the commotion, ended his call and looked up, brow furrowed. The lounge fell silent. Even the pianist halted mid-note. All eyes shifted between Ronald, Tyler, and now Pacino. The air grew heavy, like the calm before storm. Tyler, clearly unprepared, hurried to Pacino's table, wringing his hands. "Mr. Pacino, sir, I apologize for interrupting," he said, voice trembling slightly. "There's been a complaint about something you said on the phone." Pacino narrowed his eyes, but kept his tone calm, almost amused. "A complaint? About what exactly?" Tyler glanced at Ronald, who stood arms crossed while Evelyn tugged at his sleeve. "It's regarding, your comment. About a political figure. It upset one of our guests." Pacino leaned back, a faint smirk playing on his lips, though his eyes remained cold. "Kid, I was having a private conversation. If someone's offended, let them come say it to my face." Before Tyler could respond, Ronald strode over, face burning. "I'm the one who's offended," he snapped, jabbing a finger at Pacino. "You can't sit here, in a place like this, and throw insults at President Trump. People like you think you're above it all, don't you?" The lounge had become a stage, and Pacino knew how to command attention. He rose slowly, his movements deliberate, his 5.5-foot frame somehow filling the space. "People like me," he said, his voice quiet but resonant, the kind that could silence an entire theater. "I'm just a man having tea. You're the one making a circus out of this." Ronald stiffened. "This hotel has standards. It's no place for those who disrespect decent American values." Pacino's laugh was sharp, almost a bark. "Values? You talk about values, then attack a stranger over a phone call? That's rich." Tyler, now sweating, tried to intervene. "Gentlemen, please, let's remain calm." But Ronald wasn't done. "I want him removed," he demanded, turning to Tyler. "If you won't do anything, I'll call the manager. I have friends on this hotel chain's board." Pacino's expression darkened, but he didn't explode. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his voice a low growl. "You want me kicked out? For what? For speaking my mind? Last I checked, this was still America." The argument was cut short by the arrival of the hotel's general manager, Patricia Coleman, a woman in her 50s with a crisp blazer and the air of someone who knew how to handle crises. A panicked staffer had summoned her, and now she assessed the situation with a professional gaze. "What's going on here?" Patricia asked, her tone firm but neutral. Stammering, Tyler explained, while Ronald repeated his demand to have Pacino ejected. Pacino stood silent, arms crossed, watching Patricia with the intensity of a man who had seen worse battles. Patricia turned to Pacino. "Mr. Pacino, I deeply apologize for the inconvenience. Can you confirm what was said?" Pacino met her gaze. "I was on the phone with a friend. Said something about Trump that this guy," he nodded at Ronald, "didn't like. Now he's trying to get me thrown out." Patricia pressed her lips together. She looked at Ronald, then back at Pacino. "Mr. Pacino, we strive to maintain a comfortable environment for all our guests. Your comment, though private, caused a disturbance. I'll have to ask you to leave the lounge." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Pacino's jaw tightened, but he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice a controlled rumble. "You're ejecting me because this guy got his feelings hurt? You're picking sides in an argument you don't even understand." Patricia stood her ground. "This isn't about sides, sir, it's about maintaining decorum." Pacino shook his head, grabbed his coat from the chair. "Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over." He turned to Ronald, eyes blazing. "You think you won something here? All you did was prove you're afraid of a conversation." As Pacino walked toward the lobby, the crowd parted, whispers trailing him. Ronald returned to his table, triumphant, while Evelyn looked mortified. But the story didn't end there, far from it. Outside on the busy Philadelphia sidewalk, Pacino stood under the hotel awning, the autumn air sharp with the scent of wet leaves and exhaust. He pulled out his phone again, but this time he wasn't calling Charlie. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years, local journalist Maria Torres, known for her fearless reporting on social issues. "Maria," he said when she answered, his voice steady but insistent. "I've got a story for you. Meet me at the Grand Meridian. You won't believe what just happened." As he hung up, a small crowd began to gather, passers-by who recognized him, a few hotel guests who had witnessed the scene. Pacino ignored them. Instead, he stared at the hotel's gleaming facade, his mind racing. He wasn't angry, not in the way people might expect from the man who played Tony Montana. This was something deeper, a quiet resolve. He had faced injustice before on screen and off, and knew one thing. You didn't fight bias with fists or shouts. You fought it with words, with ideas, with clarity that could shift the mood in a room. What happened next would shock everyone, from the hotel staff to Ronald Hargrove to the entire city. But for now, Al Pacino stood alone, a man underestimated, waiting for the next act to begin. The bustling sounds of Philadelphia enveloped Al Pacino as he stood under the awning of the Grand Meridian. The crisp autumn wind carried the scent of coffee from a nearby cafe and the smoky aroma of a street vendor's hot dogs. The crowd around him thickened. Several passers-by had already pulled out their phones, filming the legendary actor who seemed both ordinary and larger than life. But Pacino ignored the camera flashes. His mind was elsewhere, back in the hotel lounge where he'd just been humiliated for a private conversation, and on what he planned to do next. Maria Torres, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer, arrived within 20 minutes. Her gray sedan parked across from the hotel, and she jumped out, clutching a notepad and recorder. In her early 40s, Maria had a reputation for digging deep, especially when it came to injustice. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and her eyes gleamed with curiosity as she spotted Pacino in the crowd. What the hell happened?" she said, pushing through the onlookers. Her voice was raspy from years of smoking and late-night reporting. "You said you had a story. I'm all ears." Pacino nodded, his face stern but composed. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing to a small coffee shop across the street. "Too many eyes here." Inside, the cafe smelled of freshly ground coffee and warm croissants. The wooden tables bore ring stains from countless cups, and the espresso machine hummed behind the counter. Pacino and Maria settled into a corner, away from the windows. He ordered tea, the same one he'd never gotten to finish at the hotel, while Maria asked for black coffee. When the waitress left, Pacino began recounting the incident. He detailed everything. The phone call, Ronald's outrage, Tyler's nervousness, and Patricia's cold decision to eject him from the lounge. His voice remained steady, but Maria noticed his fingers tightening around the porcelain cup when he described Ronald demanding his removal. "This isn't about Trump," Pacino said, his eyes locked onto hers. "It's about people thinking they can silence others just because they disagree. That guy, Ronald, he wasn't just offended, he wanted control. And the hotel? They enabled him because they were afraid of a complaint. That's weakness, Maria, and I'm not swallowing it." Maria scribbled notes, her pen flying across the page. "You realize this could blow up, right?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "You're Al Pacino. People will listen. But it'll also stir up the political swamp. You ready for that?" Pacino smirked, though there was no warmth in it. "I'm not looking for a war. I want a conversation. A real one. About why we're so afraid of each other's words. If it stirs something up, good. Maybe that's what we need." Maria nodded, her mind already crafting headlines. "All right, I'll write this. But I need details. Are you willing to give an official statement? And is there anyone else who can back up your version?" Pacino thought for a moment. There was a waitress in the lounge. Young, maybe 25. She saw everything. Think her name was Leah. And the pianist. He heard it all from start to finish. Maria jotted down the names. "I'll follow up. One more thing. Do you want me to reach out to the hotel for comment? They're probably drafting a press release to cover their asses." "Let them talk," Pacino said, sipping his tea. "But I'm going back there. Tonight. And I want you with me." Maria's eyebrows shot up. "Back? After they kicked you out?" "Exactly," he replied, his voice steely. "I don't run from fights, but I fight on my terms." The return. Meanwhile, the Grand Meridian was tense. Patricia Coleman sat in her third-floor office, reviewing security footage from the lounge. Her fingers tapped nervously on the desk. She knew the Pacino incident could be a PR disaster. Social media was already buzzing. Several guests had posted clips of Pacino arguing with Ronald, and the hashtag Pacino kicked out was gaining traction. Ronald Hargrove, meanwhile, sat in his luxury suite with Evelyn, flipping through Fox News. "I did the right thing," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "These Hollywood types think they can trash our values. Someone had to put him in his place." Evelyn, scrolling through Twitter, sighed. "Ronald, have you seen this? Some people are calling you a hero, but others. They're saying you went too far. This could backfire." "Let them talk," he grumbled. "I spoke the truth." But even Ronald couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that he'd kicked a hornet's nest. At 8 p.m., Pacino returned to the Grand Meridian, this time with Maria Torres and a small press crew. Dressed in a dark blazer, he exuded quiet confidence. The lobby fell silent as he entered, whispers trailing him. Maria stayed close, her recorder running, while a local news cameraman filmed everything. Patricia Coleman, alerted by security, descended to the lobby. Her face was a mask of professionalism, but her eyes betrayed tension. "Mr. Pacino," she said, extending a hand. "I didn't expect you back so soon." How can I assist you? Pacino ignored her hand. Instead, he met her gaze. You can start by talking to me. Not as a manager to a guest, but as one person to another. About why you chose to eject me instead of defending my right to a private conversation. Silence. Guests, staff, even security, all froze, waiting for her response. Patricia opened her mouth, but no words came. She knew every syllable was being recorded, and one wrong move could end her career. Mr. Pacino, she finally said, her voice cautious, our goal is comfort for all guests. Your comment caused tension. We acted to de-escalate. Pacino shook his head. You didn't de-escalate. You took a side, and not mine. The question is, why? Because I said something someone didn't like? Or because you're afraid of people like him? He nodded toward where Ronald had stood earlier. Maria stepped forward. Ms. Coleman, I'm Maria Torres with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Can you confirm Mr. Pacino was forced to leave the lounge due to a guest complaint? And is it standard policy to eject guests for private conversations? Patricia clenched her jaw. We don't comment on individual incidents. Our policy is to ensure harmony. Harmony. Pacino repeated, his voice rising but controlled. Harmony is when people can speak without fear of being thrown out. Harmony is listening, not silencing. You think ejecting me brought harmony? All you did was show fear. The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. Leah, the lounge waitress, stood nearby, holding a tray of empty glasses. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't look away from Pacino. Then from the crowd, the pianist Edward, a man in his 50s with silver temples, stepped forward, holding up his phone. I saw everything, he said, his voice trembling but firm. I was playing when it happened. Mr. Pacino was just talking on the phone. That other man started it. And the hotel. They didn't even try to understand. Patricia paled. Maria turned to Edward. Will you testify for the article? Yes, he said. This isn't right. I've worked here 10 years, and I've never seen someone thrown out for that. Pacino looked at Edward, his expression softening. Thank you, he said quietly. Then, to Patricia, I don't want you to lose your job. I don't want this hotel shut down. But I want you to think about what happened. And how you can do better. I'm willing to talk. The question is, are you? He let the words hang in the air, then turned to the crowd. This isn't about politics. It's about losing the ability to listen to each other. If we can't speak without fear of being silenced, what's left? The lobby erupted in applause, not everyone, but many. Leah, the waitress, set down her tray and joined in, her eyes glistening. Maria smiled, her recorder still running. Patricia stood motionless, her face unreadable. But inside, she knew this moment would change everything. Pacino hadn't just challenged her or the hotel. He challenged a culture of silence, fear, and division. The next day, Maria's article made the Philadelphia Inquirer front page. Al Pacino versus injustice. Hotel incident ignites national debate. Social media exploded, with hashtag #StandWithPacino overshadowing the earlier backlash. TV talk shows begged Pacino for interviews, but he declined, saying only, I said what I needed to. Now it's your turn to speak. Ronald Hargrove watched the news from his suite, his face grim. Evelyn beside him said quietly, maybe you were right, Ronald. But maybe he was too. At the Grand Meridian, Patricia called an emergency staff meeting. She announced a review of guest complaint policies and promise tolerance training. Leah got a promotion, Edward a bonus for his honesty. But these were just first steps. Pacino returned to New York, but his words lingered in Philadelphia, echoing in the hearts of those who'd heard him. He hadn't changed America overnight, but he'd planted a seed, an idea that dialogue, even difficult, is stronger than silence. And in that, there was hope, a small step that could lead to something greater.